So 41 new cases today, under 50 for the first time since June. So we're at the lowest levels for some months and with an overall increase of only 36 with the reclassifications. I know people are watching the 14-day average pretty closely now, given that our metrics refer to that. For regional Victoria, it's only just above 5. So I would expect in the 2 weeks from now, it'll absolutely drop below 5, all things being equal. And without outbreaks, significant outbreaks occurring. For Metro Melbourne, that average in the last 14 days has been close to 100, but we have to consider that it was close to 400 only a month ago. So that continues to trend down, and again, in the 2 weeks from now, we could expect it to be below 50 as a reflection of today's number. So absolutely heading in the right direction, but we do still have 1,781 active cases. So again, in thinking about opening up, in thinking about why can't we go to a much more open movement, those active cases are a risk. They all have close contacts. There are still thousands of close contacts being followed up on a daily basis, and we need to bear that in mind when we take those next steps that open industry, that open our movements from our home. Happy to take questions.
What is the Melbourne 14-day average today then?
It's close to 100 for the last 2 weeks.
Just with the dates versus data, I guess. If we get to a point sometime next week where the average is, let's say, 30, do we have to wait until September 28, or we've hit the 14-day benchmark, out we go, change the
No,
next
for the purposes of certainty, I mean, they are indicative dates because it could not be on track for that. But in terms of the certainty that we're providing, the 28th of September is the opening date for that next step.
But for all those steps, I guess my question is, if we hit the benchmarks that you've set out in the data, the 30 average or the less than 5 cases for 2 weeks, if we hit that before these dates, will we be able to make the next step sooner?
Well, we'll make the following step after 28th of September potentially sooner, but the 28th of September is locked in for the next step.
I guess, sorry, Brett.
That's a hard date, yeah.
The other ones.
Beyond that, you mean?
Yeah, beyond that. We're talking about 26th of October and the 23rd of November.
Yeah.
Could we get there sooner, if the numbers?
Again, there's potential for that. I think we should always be in a process of continuous review. There's absolutely a need for clarity, and in people's minds they need to know, especially from an industry point of view, about some of those indicative dates. But we could miss them on the one hand because we don't get to those numbers. But we should also reflect on being in a much more successful position earlier on and to give consideration to earlier.
But Brett, even September the 28th, if we were able to bring that forward, I'm sure business would be more than happy, wouldn't they? They wouldn't worry about the clarity that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think we need to have September 28 locked in. We've talked about a range of cases that we'd like to get to in terms of an average over the next couple of weeks. But regardless of that average, I think we need to absolutely have that time to drive transmission down so that we're going in the right direction.
Just on the single, I know the Premier just offered some clarity, just a question from some of our readers and viewers. Is the person, if it's a single person, does the visitor have to come to them, or can they go to a house that's full of a family, for example?
Yeah, the movement can be either way, to either household, but in whatever circumstance, it has to be just with that one other individual, unless one of those individuals has young children that can't otherwise be cared for outside the home.
They nominate someone?
Person each week, correct?
No, it's a nominated person for the whole time until we move to a different setting.
Until like the next step, or
Exactly, until the next step.
In terms of enforcement, how do you enforce that? How do you know that someone's not just, visiting one person 1 week and someone else
we are
3 days
working
later?
on the basis that people have been doing the right thing now in terms of not visiting others. People have been doing the right thing in terms of staying at home as they've been required to do. There is some enforcement mechanism for some of those things, but a lot of it is based on the fact that we know people are motivated to do the right thing and people are doing the right thing. The fact that people who are living alone, single parents, have been calling for these changes is an indication that they've been staying at home regardless of those really difficult circumstances. And so that's an indication that there are many, many people who are just doing the right thing because they know it makes a difference.
Is there a formal nomination process? Like, have you set up some sort of process where there's an official...
No, there's no formal nomination, but this is for someone to bear in mind that whoever they nominate is that person until we move through to the next step.
How confident, though, can you be that no one will exploit this?
Oh, you can never say that no one will exploit this. You can never say that about anything in this regard, and we've still got people who are doing the wrong thing occasionally. But overwhelmingly, people are following the rules, and I think people understand that it's a risk if you go beyond what these restrictions allow. If you were to change the person that you see on a weekly basis, this is still where transmission happens. It happens within the household, and it happens when people, in a sense, have their guard down and are sitting close together and talking. It is a risk of transmission, and that's why we've taken baby steps in terms of this, and why it needs to be a single person, a single nominated person through the whole step.
Just back on the reopening dates, I suppose October 26 is probably the one that people are most looking forward to, because that's when the curfew ends, that's when the stay-at-home restrictions end. Are you effectively saying that if we get the numbers down more quickly, there is a possibility that that will be brought forward? Yeah, I think we would always go through a process of review, that we wouldn't say different circumstances shouldn't lead to a relook at how we're tracking and the risk of moving to a different stage. I think the clarity is important, but I think, as you say, everyone would welcome an earlier opening rather than a later one. I just don't want to be giving that promise in advance of knowing how we're tracking.